I do believe in history. If you look at music or software, music was done by the labels, software was done by Microsoft or IBM. Then came the internet, PCs, tablets, MP3 players. Now, anybody can create music, anybody can create software. There's a brief spike of Napster, Linux, nobody pays anything. What's settled is it's not one versus the other, it's ecology of markets that didn't exist. There's markets of 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 1,000,000. There's still labels, there's still mass market software, but I would argue they're the least interesting things happening now, because that's where you make the same thing for everyone. The most interesting stuff in music or in software is in this ecology of intermediate-sized markets. And what we see happening today is these digital fab tools that don't work the way they will ultimately, but are useful today, are creating entirely new markets where I disagree, where people make houses, they make furniture, they make cars, they make boats for themselves. They're compelling. It's not, it doesn't scale. It doesn't scale in exactly the same way that making MP3 tracks or apps doesn't scale. It's filling a different ecosystem in the market. So have your conventional manufacturing, it'll be better, but I think it'll also be boring because it's making what everybody needs that's the same. The real ferment of activity is where you make stuff that's different.
Look, there's no question that mass customization in big manufacturing is there. I mean, when my son was playing soccer when he was a younger kid, he'd go to Adidas or whatever, for like $5 more, he'd get customized shoes. It's like, but that's not Fred making those shoes in Fred's house. That's Adidas at some factory using advanced technology and CAD and CNC to make those shoes. So I don't dispute that we're going to have much more customized manufacturing, and that's going to be our advantage. My only point is that we're not going to ever, at least in the next 20 years, we're not moving to an economy where individuals are going to be making large numbers of things. You'll make some things, but it's not going to be a big deal.
There's a tremendous bias in that the word manufacturing means a building remote from people where you go to work and then you ship stuff out of it. And again, the weight of history is that'll still exist, but there's going to be central manufacturing, regional manufacturing, citywide manufacturing, down at the end of your street manufacturing, in your house manufacturing. That's going to become, technically, what's enabled is that becomes a continuum of scales. And each of those scales has relative merits. I agree yours will still exist, but I don't agree that's the only interesting scale. There's going to be many scales that weren't viable before today.
Yeah, it's not going to be an either or. It's going to be an and both. And it's going to be an and both with a continuum. And it's going to be a business model in which some of these big manufacturing companies will have to think of how they're going to enable their consumer base to co-create with them. And to give you, some things you can do home, and some things you'll have to rely on the factory.
Absolutely, but the real question is, so we got a $2 trillion and $3 trillion in manufacturing output. The real question is, are we going to get above, $1 billion in this? And we're not.
Let me give you a great example.
So when we get to 50 billion, I think we can have a conversation.